Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. A re-energized Umno is gathering for its General Assembly over the next few days, still riding high on its victory in Nenggiri over the weekend after having reclaimed the State Assembly seat from Perikatan Nasional with a healthy majority. Does the Nenggiri win signal a potential turning point for the waning party, or was it just an isolated victory in a traditionally strong Umno seat? Well, joining us now to discuss this further is Dr. Syaza Shukri, Associate Professor of Political Science at International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM. Dr. Syaza, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Can I ask you what your interesting takeaways were from Umno's win in Nenggiri? What were they for you?
Right, thank you, Melisa. For me, the biggest takeaway is that UMNO is not out yet, I think, because a lot of us were talking about how after 2022, being the party and the coalition, the Perikatan Nasional, winning a relatively lower number of seats at 30, we're saying, UMNO is probably on the out, it needs to do a lot of restructuring, soul searching and whatnot. Perhaps the idea here is that they've found their footing a little bit, because the thing is, we make a lot of these predictions as analysts. Back in 2022, we thought that, this is going to be a Pakatan Harapan versus Perikatan Nasional, and it turned out we're wrong, right? Perikatan Nasional came out strong. Even in 2018, no one suspected the change in government. So what I'm trying to say here is that we may make this prediction, UMNO is on the out and whatnot, but guess what? This election shows that UMNO still has a place among the people. And the fact that the majority that they regain is a very comfortable one. It shows that, we're not done with UMNO yet. For me, that is the biggest takeaway, that all three parties or coalitions are now on an, I could say, it's fair that voters are looking at all three of them more or less equally now. So who can gain the trust of the people again?
Right. Particularly because this happened in Kelantan. I wanted to kind of focus on the local setting of it. How does this shift the political landscape in Kelantan? Can we conclude from last weekend that PAS's stronghold in Kelantan has weakened?
No, no. For me, that is premature statement to make, because like you've kind of alluded just now, that this is a traditionally UMNO seat. Gua Musang as a parliamentary constituency as well. This has always been under UMNO. So how I see it is that what happened in 2023, last year, during the state election in Kelantan, was what we would call a deviating election, meaning that the voters last year were trying to, I guess, find an alternative. They want to give a chance to Perikatan Nasional, just because, it has been with UMNO for since 2004, if I'm not mistaken. Nenggiri has been under UMNO. So they're looking for an alternative and, riding on what we call the green wave of 2022. So the people were, again, trying to see if Perikatan Nasional could offer something different, something better for them. So that's how I see what happened in 2023. So what happened last weekend is just that, okay, people decided they want to go back to their traditional representative, which is from. So no, it won't. I don't see the rippling effect in the rest of Kelantan.
Right. The Tengku Razali factor cannot be denied here. I mean, what do you think the combination of the kind of coolie stature in Gua Musang combined with a young candidate, the kind of attractive, kind of young Azmawi role play in UMNO's victory in Nenggiri?
I think it plays a very important role, because for me, it signals continuity. Because we always talk about, having new faces, younger candidate, representative. Sure, that all sounds nice, but at the end of the day, when we talk to Malaysian voters, they want someone that they can trust. And when they say that, they mean someone with a track record. So when you put someone new, a fresh face who people don't know yet, that has very little track record, what to go on to make their decision, then they look at who's backing this person. So when you bring in someone like Kuli, who's been around for so long, people have that trust that, okay, this is a continuation of UMNO. So what UMNO have done for us in the past could translate in this term as well via this new rep. So I think this is a very smart strategy, this combination of you know, the old and the new, because UMNO represents Malaysian history in a way, but we want a new history as well. So it's a smart move, definitely.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what UMNO got right this time around in terms of campaigning, in terms of kind of the strategy it played here, because voter turnout in Nenggiri was remarkable, higher than in GE15, and I am surprised, particularly because Kelantan often doesn't see very high voter turnout, particularly in state elections. Many Kelantanis don't return home to vote. So what does that tell you about this round of campaigning and the political engagement in Nenggiri?
I think it shows that it works going door to door, because that is the strategy going into it from UMNO. They're trying to get people to go out to vote, going door to door campaigning, again, showing your face on the ground. This is what people want. This whole ceramah, mega ceramah, it may not work anymore because it doesn't have that human touch. And you're trying to get people to go out to vote, meaning that, you know, they have to spend their time, perhaps some money to make the trek to the voting station and whatnot. So you want to get people to have confidence that this is worth it. So that is the strategy going into it. That's what I saw, that, you know, UMNO even went back, if I'm not mistaken, they went to certain houses for a few times. They went to those who they knew were voters or supporters of the other side, and they didn't give up, and they kept on trying to get people to come out to vote, because you were right, last year, if I'm not mistaken, turnout was about 60%. So when turnout is relatively lower, it shows that people just perhaps don't trust the system, or there's fatigue there. And when the turnout went up this time around, it shows that, okay, people feel that there's something worth it for them to fight for this time. And that is kudos to UMNO for doing that.
Yeah, particularly because I also saw that Nenggiri had a significant Orang Asli voter population. So Nenggiri home to a large Orang Asli population. I'm wondering what you think their role was in this by-election. What does it suggest about their political influence? And I wonder whether this could lead the not just kind of state governments but federal government as well to pay more attention to how important Orang Asli are in shaping the political landscape.
Right. So this is a bit tricky. I don't want to downplay the Orang Asli voters, but if we look at numbers, they make up about, I don't know, 12-13% of the voters in Nenggiri. So not really a big number, right? But people kept on putting the spotlight on the Orang Asli, perhaps again for one reason or another. So they are an important component, not just as a voter base, but, you know, as Malaysian in general. We want to bring back the so-called marginalized community into the discourse and whatnot. So it's good for politicians to actually pay attention to what they want. And I think the signal here is that they want development. And UMNO via Perikatan Nasional, via the unity government, perhaps is one of the best ways for them to get what they want. You know, we're talking about not just economic development, social development. So I think that is the signal here. That is what the people, not just the Orang Asli, but, you know, Nenggiri voters in general, which are a bit more in rural areas, this is what they want. But to put this squarely as, you know, Orang Asli result, or, you know, support by the Orang Asli community, then you're not paying attention to the 80% who are not part of the community as well.
Okay, excellent point. What do you then see, Dr. Syaza, as the way the landscape has shifted, or if it has shifted at all? Does UMNO's win in Nenggiri tell us anything about the current state of politics? You said don't discount UMNO, they're not out yet, but what does that tell us? And bearing in mind UMNO is meeting for their General Assembly now, will this spark the kind of catalyst to spark a revival in UMNO?
I think so. I mean, if we're talking about UMNO itself, this is definitely a huge boost for them, for the leaders themselves, for the voters, for the supporters of UMNO. This is a massive win for them, because as we know, the other by-elections we had, the incumbent were able to win, and Perikatan Nasional, in fact, increased their vote shares in all the other by-elections except for this one. So it brings UMNO again out of this, I don't know, this cocoon that people may want to put them in. They're not there. But I think more importantly for us, when you're asking about Malaysian political landscape going forward, it's about everyone now is on an equal footing now. Pakatan Harapan, what I'm trying to say is that all three have been in government. People can judge them one way or another on that. So now going forward, what do you want to offer? What can you offer? You cannot go back to, playing sentiment or playing victim or saying, I was in the opposition, therefore, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work anymore. Now it's about, okay, you're in government. What can you do? What have you done? So it's the same for all three now. Barisan Nasional, Pakatan Harapan, Perikatan Nasional. What can you offer to the people?
Is that a good thing? I mean, now to kind of do away with the more toxic side of politics and to be able to be judged based on track record. Is that a good thing for citizens, for voters?
It's definitely a good thing, but it all boils down to the people, the citizens, as you said it. I mean, from the elite leadership part, perhaps this is how they're going into it going forward. But how receptive are the people? So we have to kind of bridge this between the political leaders and the people. How do you get the people to actually recognize that these are the way forward, that it has to be policy focused? So in a way, it's a good thing, but if it's too complicated, it might not be a good thing as well. Then people would get the fatigue that we were talking about as well.
Dr. Syaza, thank you for being on the show with me again. That was Dr. Syaza Shukri, Associate Professor of Political Science at IIUM. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the future of Malay politics. This following the quote-unquote first flip in the Nenggiri by-election over the weekend. Does it signal a return of Malay support to the Pakatan Harapan Barisan Nasional Madani government? Joining me now is Dr. Azmil Muhammad Tayeb, Associate Professor at USM's School of Social Sciences. Dr. Azmil, thank you for being on the show with me today. Can I ask you what you make of the UMNO win in Nenggiri? Was that an indication of a broader shift in voter loyalty, Malay support towards UMNO, or did you see it as more of a localized results? What were your takeaways?
Okay, so thanks, Melisa, for having me on. Looking at the Nenggiri result, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised that UMNO, or rather Barisan Nasional, won in Nenggiri. So to answer your question, I see this as more of a localized result than part of a wider trend nationwide. So precisely because Nenggiri is part of Gomusang, and which has always been a stronghold for Barisan Nasional. So we know the former MP, Tengku Razali, he was there for almost four decades. He was the MP of Gomusang. And also Nenggiri, when we look at the state election in 2023, the PM candidate only won by 801 votes, by a majority of a margin of 801 votes. So it was a pretty close election, right? And also we know Tengku Razali lost Gomusang by a very slim margin of 167 votes, right? So it's always been highly competitive. It's one of the very few BN strongholds in the state. So for BN, I think to have won in Nenggiri and by such a huge margin, by 4-4, right? So from I mean turning it around to about 3,300 votes margin, right? So I think it's a testament to the campaigning that they have done on the ground there, and then also the maximizing the support from their base in Nenggiri and Gomusang for that
Okay,
matter.
I want to come back to that, to what UMNO did to get such a solid result in Nenggiri. But kind of zooming out, do you think Nenggiri shifts anything in the broader political landscape? Does it indicate or signify anything to you, or signal anything to you about the current state of politics in Malaysia?
For me, two things, 2 points that stand out. Just from a cursory look at the election results, without looking at the data from SPR. First, I think the young voters did not turn out in similar numbers as they did in GE15 and also in the state elections last year. So I mean, as we all know, the young Malay voters overwhelmingly voted for Perikatan Nasional in G15 and also in the state election in 2023. So my sense is that they did not turn out in similar numbers. So I think the turnout is low amongst the young Malay voters, which I think in Nenggiri, the population is quite young actually. So more than 50% of the population in Nenggiri is actually below 35 years old. So the fact that Perikatan Nasional wasn't able to mobilize young Malay voters in Nenggiri to come out to vote for them, I think explains why they lost with such a big margin. And the second point is the success of Barisan Nasional or the UMNO candidate to mobilize its base, to fire up its base in Nenggiri. So as we know, in Gua Musang, Nenggiri, there are Felda settlements, Kesedah settlements, which is the federal government program that's targeted towards to develop south of Kelantan, and also the Orang Asli villages as well. I mean, these are the traditional vote bank, so to speak, for Barisan Nasional, and many of them, especially in G15 and the state election 2023, voted for Perikatan Nasional. But seems like in this case, in this election, many of them ended up going back to Barisan Nasional, to supporting Barisan Nasional, which I think is a testament to the work that the UMNO has done on the ground in Nenggiri.
Right. So you touched on a little bit about how Perikatan Nasional failed to mobilize, particularly around the youth group, and I think in this. In Nenggiri, it was their worst by-election performance since GE15. The divisions were quite evident, I think, within the Perikatan Nasional Coalition. Are there any lessons for PN in the aftermath of Nenggiri?
PN, has to do more work in sustaining the support of the Malay youth. Malay youth. In general, they're not as ideologically attached to any particular parties, right? So they're not like say like their parents, the older generations who might be loyal to UMNO or even loyal to PAS. So they're more fickle, in their voting choices, so they were obviously motivated to vote, through TikTok, campaigning by Perikatan Nasional. PN won the TikTok game in the last election, so that really helped them to to reach out to the young Malay voters, right? So, but PN should not take the young Malay voters for their support for granted, because you have to keep sustain. I mean, if they still want the support from the young Malay voters, and keep them interested, especially in the upcoming GE16.
Yeah. Is it too soon to say that Nenggiri is indicative that support for Perikatan may have peaked? I mean, I've seen some analysts making that comment. What do you think, Azmil?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I think definitely. I mean, if they keep playing the ethno-religious card, you will they will maximize their support, in no time. I think they have done that in G15 and the state election last year. So if they aspire to bigger ambition, to expand nationwide, to more heterogeneous states, then they definitely have to change, the way they campaign, and maybe focus more on issues, on policies, bread and butter issues and policies. Yeah, so I think for now, the way that people's perception of Perikatan Nasional, that it has nothing much to offer besides Malay and Islam. So
All right. So let's talk about UMNO, because beyond Nenggiri being a traditionally strong UMNO seat, what were the things that UMNO did right in Nenggiri, and can they scale that up to reverse the political attrition that they have been seeing for the past decade or so now, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I think they did is they choose a local homegrown candidate to contest, right? So the BN candidate, Asmawi, he's born in Gua Musang, so he's well known. He's been working the grounds even before he was nominated as the candidate. So he's a well-known entity in the area, and also the campaigning style of Barisan Nasional. So instead of having like mega rallies or mega ceramah, so they do ceramah kelompok, like small group rallies, so which is more intimate and allows for more Q&A, more interactive. So the public can vent out their frustration, so and feel that they're being heard. So I think that really helps, and also going door to door, which is an effective, and is the preferred way of campaigning in the rural heartlands as well. Because it's very, like, people tend to know each other. Right, and also visiting these far-flung orang asli villages. I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I've read somewhere that the BN can actually visit all the orang asli villages. So, which we all know is not easy to get to, is quite inaccessible. So I think this all helps, and finally the role of development funds. I think because in Gua Musang is quite economically depressed. It's one of even within Kelantan. Kelantan is already one of the poorest states in Malaysia, and Gua Musang, the southern part of Kelantan, is the poorest region within the state, right? So it's the least developed part of the state. So, and it's highly dependent on federal funding, for development, and for the voters there. So they know that they cannot depend on the opposition control or PN control state government, which is, I mean, first lacking in resources, and also being opposition in Kelantan doesn't help you as well with the development funds. So the only reliable source of funding is the federal government. So they voted appropriately, since BN is part of the federal government now.
Right. Dr. Azmil, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I appreciate your time. Thank you. That was Dr. Azmil Tayeb from USM School of Social Sciences, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.